You will find that what is going on in this world is this displaced people being missionized by other displaced people, trying to dig a deeper hole to fill the other hole of grief, instead of staying put and say, my hole is deep, and I will make a gift out of my hollowness to feed the holy. So that my hollowness and my grief, I will stay put. If I have to die, or I stay put and I'm really from here. And that's what it means to be indigenous. It means to be from a place. It's the Latin meaning of it, born within. So, but I am telling you that I wrote because I wanted to give the gift to you, because I realized at one point that the bad guy isn't sitting over there necessarily, and that the bad one isn't there, and I couldn't kill the guy in the Bastille and make a revolution and things would work out, because I would end up being the guy in the Bastille. And I would be the one that needed killing after that, and nothing would ever work out as it works out. That is job security for the gods of war. Well, it is. You can look around and see how much of it you're paying for right now. So the terrible understanding became to realize that it was a syndrome that was killing us, and that it was present in all people, and that every human being have indigenous soul. And the indigenous soul lived in a place beyond what they knew, because it had the memorial ability to remake the story again, to find its root. Not find its roots, not your ancestry, because otherwise it's going to be Jews and Arabs again, or the Hutus and the Tutsis. Not the ancestry, because when you start fighting over ancestry, you've already lost your indigenosity. Indigenosity goes beyond your ancestries, includes them, but goes beyond them to what made your ancestors great. So the point is that your ancestry is the thing that makes you fight. But if your ancestors were great, it wasn't because they could fight, or because they had the word, or they had the answer. If they were great, it's because of what was in the ground, the invisible holy, and their relationship to it. And that has not been passed. In most cases, because it means you have to go through an initiation that goes beyond the tribalisms. So people who are tribal are not tribalist. Tribalism sets in when you lose the tribe, and you start guarding the church key, or the word, or the Torah, or the Quran, or the Bible, or God knows what. Especially when it's fixed instead of liquid. How much of the many religious and spiritual approaches in the world are actually extravagant later outgrowths of the tiny treasured bits that displaced people, overrun or driven to disperse from their homelands, could carry in their arms as they fled, leaving the greater portion of their big stories, rituals, and understandings still waiting in the long-lost ground of their origination? Are most of the allegorized, dogmatized, literalized, sanitized, boring, orally historified rituals and written stories only jealously guarded fragments of a pushed-aside indigenous intactness, which all people in this increasingly displaced world have hidden somewhere in their bones as an unremembered legacy in which an intact living story still waits to come into view? For if, as my old Sutuhil friends used to go on about, our human bodies are actually the earth itself, then somewhere inside this earth body, our homelands still await our return. Inner homelands, in whose soil our indigenous souls lie ready like seeds, seeds whose DNA are the big, culturally intact stories, seeds that have waited for thousands of years for the spiritual climate to shift enough to where the tears of our human grief about the day we finally remember the overwhelming magnitude of our diverse, earth-oriented cultural loss could moisten the seeds of our big story. Moisten the seeds of our big stories, causing our indigenous memories to sprout again into well-rooted trees of remembrance upon whose branches a never-before-seen fruit, a new possibility for humans on earth, might come into sight, remembered beyond its own recollecting into a time beyond the already known and limited imagination of the age. Some stories, however, like the toe bone in the tooth, sometimes refuse to wade in the ground like seeds. And without the old rituals where they used to live out their lives, they show up in the most unexpected places, like Los Angeles, under bridges, If you read this story, there's so much of Los Angeles in here. Because I plopped down in here when they came back from Guatemala. It's a heavy thing for me to come back here and be welcomed by you on a stage when we were hated and thrown away. It's an amazing thing. So it's a big thing. That's why I like to read this and take my time. Let me just say that again. Some stories, however, like the toe bone and the tooth, sometimes refuse to wade in the ground like seeds. Your stories as well. And without the old rituals where they used to live out their lives, they show up in the most unexpected places, under bridges, in wars, at the job, on the street, hitchhiking, living out that big story in extraordinary ways inside the lives of ordinary people anywhere, who, like refugees, learn to live any way they can away from their homelands. The earth itself never stops talking out its big story. It is the people who stop listening. The earth is always talking. The big story, capital big story, the big story needs the earth to hear its tale, and the people need the story to be well on the earth. But that means we have to have good open ears to listen. The indigenous soul hiding inside us has just such ears. This book is an account of the old Sutuhil mythology of the toe bone and a tooth as it lived itself out in my own life. A life spent trying to keep this story alive and remembered when the spiritual landscape of the Tutuhil Maya it was born from was dismembered by the troops of the same syndrome of cultural amnesia that has caused all the diasporas of the world. The Jews, the Armenians, the Africans, the Poles, the Samis, the Siberians, the Mongols, everybody has experienced it. This book is not only about Mayans or Guatemala, Americans, America, or the English. They're in there too. You had to get them. It's also, I love the English, don't get me wrong. It is about how long it takes to become a human being. This book is not only about Mayans or Guatemala, Americans, America, or the English. It is about how long it takes to become a human being. It seems to say that humans are most useful to the universe when they are blessing, especially when the unblessed in the culture become the blessers. And when humans give their gifts to what they cannot see with their eyes, when they turn the failure and grief of their everyday losses into life-giving beauty, and when they are in love. The toe bone and the tooth is a love story. And I give it as a gift to all those that love, especially to those whose arms outstretched in the night, who having given all they had left, speak alone to what they would have loved, and hearing only in reply the moon upon the water, and begin to sing, and hoping the real one might appear.